In this episode, we talk about the decline in the number of animals that make up the prey base for tigers in India. We also talk about the government capping the temperature range of air conditioners across the country. But first, we talk about the implementation of the Ayushman Bharat scheme in Jharkhand. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. The Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana is India's flagship health insurance scheme. The idea behind which has been to provide health insurance to over 10 crore vulnerable families and offering coverage to each of them for up to 5 lakh rupees per annum.
So, the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana (PMJAY) was launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2018, right here in Ranchi, Jharkhand.
That's the Indian Express's Shubham Tigga, who reports on the state for the paper.
It was meant to provide cashless healthcare coverage of up to 5 lakh per family per year for serious illness or surgeries, and it was a landmark move for public health in India. In terms of funding, the scheme follows a 60-40 ratio. 60% would be contributed by central government and 40% by the state government.
The scheme so far has helped thousands in the country to access the kind of healthcare which otherwise would have been out of their reach. But in Jharkhand, the scheme is currently facing serious issues in disbursing payments to enrolled hospitals. According to Shubham, hundreds of hospitals haven't received payments since last June, leading some to withdraw from the scheme altogether. In this segment, we speak to him about the reasons behind the delay and its impact on the state's healthcare system. So Shubham, let's start with the basics. Tell us how the scheme operates, how do patients avail the benefits, and how are hospitals paid for it?
So, in terms of funding, a third-party insurance company or any trust is appointed to process claims and disburse payments directly to hospitals. Now, if we come to Jharkhand, in Jharkhand, the scheme operates in a hybrid mode. So, for claims for up to 1 lakh rupees, the insurance company pays, and for anything beyond that, the Jharkhand State Health Society, which we call JSAS here, takes over the reimbursement in what's called the trust mode. So additionally, in June 2024, the Jharkhand government introduced its co-branded or extension version, we can say, of the scheme. It was called Mukhyamantri Abwa Swasth Bima Yojana. It also increased the coverage from 5 lakh rupees to 15 lakh per family. This expanded the scheme to cover all ration card holders, even those previously not included under PMJAY. And in terms of reach, around 1.5 crore Ayushman cards have been issued in Jharkhand so far, according to the government data. But if we include the state scheme, roughly, I think more than 65 lakh households, that's almost the majority of the state's population, are now covered under the some way to this health insurance plan. And to give you a sense of scale, in the last 7 years, over 200 crore rupees have been disbursed to hospitals in Jharkhand under this scheme.
And we understand that the Ayushman Bharat scheme in Jharkhand is facing hurdles, particularly when it comes to hospital payments. So can you tell us what are the main issues here?
Yes. So right now situation is quite serious. According to the hospital associations, there are multiple associations here. So according to them, and even the government also claimed that they actually confirmed that over 190 crore in payments are currently pending to hospitals across Jharkhand. If we understand by this that how many hospitals are there and how many hospitals are under some radar or investigation. So we have to understand that there are around 750 hospitals impaneled under the Ayushman Bharat scheme in the state across Jharkhand. Out of this, 212 hospitals haven't received their dues since June last year. And another remaining, there are around 538 private hospitals haven't been paid since February this year, 2025. Now, many hospitals, especially in districts like Palamu, Hazaribagh, Deoghar and other districts also have already stopped accepting Ayushman patients or are on the verge of doing so. So the delay in payments is mainly due to pending claim settlements or technical glitches, which we will discuss further. And if we talk about the 212 hospitals, which I said, these hospitals are also under the scanner of ED, Enforcement Directorate. These hospitals were identified after the NAFU, the National Anti-Fraud Unit, which works under the National Health Authority to detect fraudulent activities in the scheme. So these 212 hospitals are NAFU triggered hospitals. So they are also under the scanner of ED. What happens? So NAFU now is using AI-based system to detect suspicious patterns in hospital billing or the data. And according to NAFU, many of these 212 hospitals showed sign of irregularities or possibly fraud. However, the hospital associations are arguing that in many cases, even minor technical errors are also being flagged as fraud by the system. So they are saying that the AI system might be too sensitive and in some cases, genuine claims are being delayed due to these automatic red flags.
Right. And Shubham, how was this issue uncovered? How did the Enforcement Directorate start investigating this matter?
So it really came to light when several hospitals, particularly private ones, started publicly raising about this issue and about the issue of non-payment. So around April 2025, the ED also conducted raids on 21 locations, including some hospitals in Ranchi. So this was based on the CAG audit report and the NAFU data. And after that, when these hospitals were raided, so there were allegations that like claim of treatments of dead patients or fake beneficiaries, these hospitals are taking benefit. So, and these red flags from the AI-enabled NAFU system caused a freeze on many hospital payments, including some that hadn't done anything wrong. And doctors and hospitals group started coming forward in media, refusing new scheme, Ayushman scheme, and they are saying that we are not going to take the patients until and unless we are getting paid, or the government is coming forward and doing the discussion with the private hospitals.
Okay, so this is one issue, but why aren't the other hospitals who are not being investigated by the Enforcement Directorate receiving their payments? Is this due to possible irregularities in how the funds are being released? Or is there another reason behind this delay?
So interestingly, according to state officials, there is no mismatch or shortage of funds. This is what the officials are saying. In fact, both the center and the Jharkhand government have been regularly allocating budget for the Ayushman Bharat Yojana. And in this financial year alone, 4,000 crore rupees was allocated by the center and around 250 crore by the state government. So funding isn't the core problem here. The real issue, according to the authorities, began after the launch of the new digital platform in February 2025, which is called HEM, Health Entitlement Management System. This new portal was meant to streamline operations, but it experienced some technical glitches which disrupted claim processing and payments for several hospitals. The government now says those glitches have been resolved, but even then, funds are yet to be released. So there is still uncertainty on why the halt continues. Apart from this, as we have discussed, that 212 hospitals are under investigation of the ED by the ED. So the state health department says it cannot interfere while the investigation is ongoing, and that's another major reason why the payment to those hospitals are currently frozen. Apart from the platform thing, this is the second reason which the state government is saying that we cannot interfere or intervene in this whole investigation.
And Shubham, what do the doctors and the medical associations in the state have to say about this situation?
They are coming very strongly. In fact, not just one, but several associations, including the Association of Healthcare Providers of India, AHPI. It's the Association of Jharkhand chapter and the hospital board coming under the Indian Medical Association. So they have spoken about the crisis. This is a very big number. They claim that around 60 to 70 hospitals across Jharkhand have already shut down operations due to the unpaid dues and the complete lack of clarity from the government. And this number could have been even higher now as the hospital continue to struggle after every few days. So many of these hospitals were heavily dependent on Ayushman Bharat patients, and with payment stuck, they say that they simply can't afford staff salaries, electricity bills, or basic operational costs. And they have made it clear that we are not blaming the government, but without regular fund dispersal, we cannot sustain Ayushman services. And what's frustrating the healthcare community even more is that the cases of NAFU triggered, which is the 212 hospitals, the associations are saying that if these hospitals are really doing some fraud or are suspicious, then investigation should be done and the government should act soon. But don't punish the remaining 538 hospitals whose payments have nothing to do with this investigation. And doctors or the private hospital community are really frustrated and demoralized. So if we take the example, then a senior surgeon, he's from Ranchi and he's running a hospital in Ranchi. So he told the Indian Express that he hasn't been able to pay his staff salary since March. And even now he is not sure when he'll be able to clear them. So, and he said that 75% of his hospital's operation are dependent on Ayushman Bharat claims. Now, when the new HEM portal, the new platform was launched in February, doctors were told it would streamline the payment system. But what happened, this is the complete opposite. Even after several months, they are still waiting for the reimbursements. So the same surgeon also shared that this hospital alone handles around 2.5 lakh rupees worth of Ayushman cases per day. And that's a huge amount for a day. So, but if things don't improve soon, he may have to shut down Ayushman service entirely, he said that. And this is just one hospital's story. If we talk to doctors across Jharkhand district by district, each one has their own version of this crisis.
And Shubham, in this entire situation, how exactly are the patients being impacted? Those who actually stand to benefit from the scheme?
It's having a very direct and visible impact. I mean, hospitals that once treated thousands of patients under this scheme are now refusing new admissions, especially in smaller districts. So many facilities are functioning at reduced capacity. Some have already stopped paying staff salaries and patients are being referred back to government hospitals. And we all know that the government hospitals themselves are overwhelmed. So the real loss is to the patients, people who are from rural communities, from the Adivasi communities. They cannot afford private healthcare. So the promise of cashless treatment is now being denied right at the hospital gates. So this is a huge issue right now in Jharkhand, and the government also claimed that 80 to 85% of the state population is connected to the Ayushman Bharat scheme. And it's not just the economically weaker sections, but there are advocates, journalists, government employees, and many more from middle class are enrolled beneficiaries. So if you look at the entire system from top to bottom, doctors, then hospital staff, then patient, everyone is affected.
And has this situation prompted any political reactions? Has the government admitted to this being a problem?
Yes, absolutely. BJP state president and leader of opposition Babulal Marandi had made a strong statement. He said that this scheme which took birth in Jharkhand is now dying in Jharkhand. And he also blamed the current CM Hemant Soren for failing to continue this scheme in state. And in response, Jharkhand Health Minister Irfan Ansari acknowledged that there were indeed some serious issues, especially with certain hospitals that were overcharging or had their claims flagged by NAFU. He said it's the responsibility of both the hospitals and the government to ensure transparency. And he said that even a single hospital is found involved in corruption, then he won't spare anyone. He made it clear that no space will be given to malpractice under this scheme. And just recently, there was a joint meeting, or we can say the conclave, between the representatives from these associations and the health minister, and other health secretary and other officials from this scheme were also present that day. So during this meeting, the government had assured that the hospitals that are pending payment crisis would be resolved within a month. And the process had already started, and even the cases of the 212 hospitals under ED radar would be addressed soon.
And now, moving on from the concerns in Jharkhand, we turn to a first of its kind wildlife data. Over the years, India has often celebrated the rise in its tiger population. And while poaching is still a problem, stronger action against it, along with other conservation efforts, has helped increase the number of tigers. In fact, India now has over 3,600 tigers, which makes up about 70% of the world's tiger population. But what's worrying is the steady decline in the number of animals that make up the prey base for these big cats, species they rely on for food. This was flagged recently by the National Tiger Conservation Authority and the Wildlife Institute of India during their latest All India Tiger Estimation.
which essentially is a study and estimation exercise of the tiger population in the country.
That's the Indian Express's Nihkil Ghanekar, who reports on wildlife for the paper.
This happens in most parts of the country, barring some parts of Northeast where the terrain is really difficult. And during this study, what happens is that typically even the herbivores, the animals which are preyed upon by tigers and other predators, such as leopards, wolves, hyenas, they are also counted.
He says this survey takes place every 4 years, and while the number of tigers is always made public, that hasn't usually been the case for other herbivores. But this year, that changed. In this segment, Nikhil breaks down why counting and studying these prey species matters and how it directly impacts the health of India's tiger population. So, Nikhil, can you tell us why they decided to publish this data this time, and why is it important for us to keep a track of these species?
Yeah, so Niharika, this was the first time that they collated and looked at the data of ungulates, which are essentially hooved herbivores such as deers, pigs, antelopes, and put out a separate independent assessment for these herbivores. Now, why this is important is because number one, they play a big role in regulating how the forest is regulated naturally. What does this mean? They eat all kinds of vegetation, beginning with the shrubs and undergrowth on the floor of the forest to the plants and small trees. And they are basically natural regulators of the growth in the forest. Number two, as we know, they are the main food, the diet of the predators such as tigers, leopards, etc. So understanding what is the health of these animals is also important to understanding what is the state of the forest and also the health of the tigers in the long term, because without them, the food chain will collapse. The forests will face a problem. So that is essentially what the assessment report looked at.
Now, tell us about the report. What did it say, and what were the key findings when it comes to the herbivores or the ungulates, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so as far as the findings are concerned, they can be divided into, let's say, three to four other main components. One is obviously about what is the state of these ungulates, as they are known, these deers, pigs, and antelopes, which are tiger prey. Secondly, what is the status of individual species of these ungulates? Third is region-wise, what is their state? And fourth, if you have to say, what are the prescriptions that are given for the future so as to course correct on certain challenges that are being faced because of poor health of certain species in certain areas. Now, to begin with, what the study revealed was that to begin with the good news, that across most parts of the country, three major species which are the core prey of tigers, which is deer in the Indian bison, which is known as gaur, spotted deer, then sambar. Now, these three species are in decent or more than decent health in most parts of the country. However, they are declining. The numbers are, or their abundance and distribution is not very good in eastern central parts of India, which spans Odisha, the forests of Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, some parts of Maharashtra, extreme eastern parts, and parts of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh.
And what do we assess are the reasons behind this decline? Does the report say anything about that?
Yeah, now the report says that this signifies that some of the habitats that these herbivores depend on, they are not in the best of shape. And why is this happening? Number one, as we all know, we humans are moving towards forests with a lot of our settlements and over a period of time, historically, obviously, and this has happened gradually. We are turning a lot of natural areas into human use areas. This is, wetlands that we see in our urban areas and peri-urban areas, also along with the forested areas such as the tiger reserves and the fringes of tiger reserves. Third, there is a lot of deforestation for a variety of reasons. One of the topmost being obviously the fact that we are a growing economy and our own economic challenges. We have to build a lot of infrastructure. There is a lot of mining happening and expanding in different parts of the countries, and which typically happens in forests. And some of the smaller reasons are how there is poaching for sustenance, which essentially means that there are communities which live on the inside and outside forests which use the meat of these herbivores for food. Now, this is not a widespread thing, this last point, but it is a problem in certain pockets. Now, these are the main reasons for the declining trend in the eastern central areas.
Now, if we go species by species, we see that some areas have an abundance of certain animals while others are lagging. What does the report say about their population status and where these species are mostly found?
So let's take a look at the cheetal first, which is one of the most common prey of tigers, the spotted deer. As per the report, it remains quite abundant across our forests, and they are quite adaptable to different areas, including the fringes of the forest and mixed use areas such as agricultural fields, which are mixed with forest areas. Secondly, as far as the sambar is concerned, which is another crucial prey, their population also remains stable, particularly in the central Indian region such as Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, and also the Western Ghats. The wild pigs are a species which are not typically at the top of the pyramid when it comes to preference by tigers, but they are obviously widely hunted by the tigers in northwestern areas such as Rajasthan, in Western Ghats primarily. The nilgai. Now, nilgai is an interesting case here because nilgai is typically one species which also causes a lot of conflict between humans and them because they enter into agricultural fields and damage crops. Now, these animals, as per the report, have been found in largely on the fringes of the forests. In some places in the forest as well, there is decent abundance. The Indian bison is primarily abundant in Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, and parts of central India. Whereas there is swamp deer is one of them, and swamp deer is more abundant in Kanha, Dudhwa, and Kaziranga. Now, coming to the northeast, there are some specific species which are more abundant in the northeast, like mouse deer and smaller herbivores which are found in northeastern India.
And Nikhil, which are the species whose population is decreasing?
So, as far as the trends of declining abundance is concerned, the report says that that is to be found in the core prey of the tigers, which is the cheetal, the sambar, and the gaur. And this is particularly in the eastern central India. Now, let's delve into why they are saying this happens. We mentioned earlier that there are certain broad reasons why there is a habitat loss, because of which these ungulates, these herbivores are affected. Now, eastern central India is a very different case compared to, let's say, Western Ghats, because primarily we have to understand that, number one, this region is historically, one can say that it has not been known for wide or very large tiger population, but it is not like it was not abundant with tigers initially in the past. However, there have been historical reasons such as hunting, like in other parts of India too, because of which the tigers have slowly declined. But in the more recent times, issues such as mining, left-wing extremism, Maoist violence, and the large areas of Chhattisgarh which are occupied by Maoist, same is the case in some parts of Jharkhand and Odisha. They have in the last 30 to 35 years affected, or 40 years if you take that period, affected patrolling, monitoring of forests in these regions. And as we all know, as human pressures, anthropogenic pressure increases in forest areas, wildlife sustenance takes a hit. They will naturally move out of these forests to other areas, and wherever they feel there is a lot of human interference and interruptions. Secondly, these areas, because of infrastructure and mining projects, the forests get fragmented a lot. Now, what this does is that it again puts pressure on the survival of the species in the long term. When habitat loss happens, the diet of the herbivores themselves gets affected. One of the other reasons cited in the report is that there is growth of invasive lantana species. Now, this has been a problem across several forests and is also seen in parts of Western Ghats specifically, but this is also noted in eastern central India.
And now coming to tigers, this scattered prey population and the fact that some places have very few ungulates left, how is that impacting the tigers?
So, one of the bigger knock-on effects of the poor health and abundance of the herbivores is that it naturally affects tiger populations. Now, this has a different set of problems for areas where the tigers are more in abundance, and we'll explain how. In areas such as Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, in some parts have reached a stage where they have a lot of tigers and are spilling over to the east central parts of the country. And because these eastern central forests have a lot of space actually for tigers, it can be good news for conservation. However, because of the pre-existing pressures that we talked about, the tigers do not necessarily prefer them and they start moving to other areas. We saw recently that there was the case of the tigress Zenith, which was found in Bengal, and it had, I think, crossed over from Odisha, if I remember correctly, to West Bengal. And now Now, these are all examples of places where, tigers naturally move out for a variety of reasons. One of them being the fact that they are territorial animals and require a large space. But when there are pre-existing pressures and the prey is not in good shape, then typically this will overall have a bad effect on the survival of tigers or long-term survival of tigers in a specific region.
And Nikhil, what role do humans play here? Does the lack of prey push the tigers closer to human settlements? Does it end up leading to the kind of conflicts that we keep hearing about?
Certainly, Niharika, that is one of the main reasons for human tiger conflict across different parts of the country can be attributed to the fact that tigers look out. And this is not only applicable to tigers, I would like to add, this we have seen also in the case of leopards in several parts of the country, that wherever any predator faces pressures on finding suitable prey in their core habitats, they will naturally move out to areas where they feel that they will find it much quicker and easier. Now, in the case of tigers, this has been seen. The conflict obviously happens for a variety of reasons. Conflict also is not necessarily because a certain tiger is preying on humans, because that is not the case typically. It almost always happens because of accidental reasons, that a human might have been working or crossing their path and the tiger might have got startled, etc. In certain cases, obviously, there have been instances where the tigers have preyed on humans directly. But that is another matter. What happens because of the poor health of their primary prey is that they will naturally move to the areas where they will find suitable prey, which might happen if they migrate from one forest to another. And while migrating, they might cross human settlements and thus come into conflict with communities. Secondly, there's an angle which is separate from the tiger-human conflict, which is the conflict between these herbivores and people. Now, we mentioned about nilgai earlier and wild pigs also, I would like to add. Now, these species typically are found a lot in mixed use areas. And as a result, there is a lot of anger among people. In fact, the people in Kerala have asked for changes to the law so that certain species can be culled. And these are all interlinked issues, as we can understand. Tigers getting affected because of prey is getting affected because of habitat loss, and they are all interlinked to areas such as deforestation, infrastructure development. So it's not something which has very easy solutions.
So does this report propose any kind of solution or anything that can be done about this problem?
Some of the solutions that have been given by the report are obviously the fact that there has to be a long-term plan to improve the quality of forests. That is certainly number one. They have talked about managing forests better. They have talked about improving the stability in certain disturbed areas for the sustenance of ungulates, such as the eastern central parts of India where extremism has survived for 30 to 40 years. Thirdly, one of the quicker solutions we can say is, which they have talked about, is breeding of these ungulates or herbivores in enclosures which are predator proof. What this means is that certain enclosures are created in a forested area so that the predators cannot come inside, and species such as cheetal or sambar, they are allowed to breed there. And this has happened already. This is not something new. This has already been in practice in Madhya Pradesh and other parts. For example, more recently, the Sahyadri Tiger Reserve in India, which has very few tigers, the Maharashtra government and the center had a plan to translocate tigers from Tadoba to Sahyadri, and they had to augment the number of prey there because the prey base was not really strong and good in numbers. So they had suggested that these species should be brought from other areas where they're in more abundance, and they had gone ahead with these enclosures as we mentioned earlier. So these are some of the solutions that were suggested.
And in the end, we talk about the Indian government's preparation to introduce a new regulation that will cap the temperature range of air conditioners across the country. If approved, this move could change how millions of Indians use their ACs, both at home and in public spaces like hotels and even cars. The move, announced by Union Power Minister Manohar Lal Khattar, is part of a larger effort to reduce energy consumption and lighten the load on India's stretched power grid.
जहां तक एयर कंडीशंस की स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन, टेम्परेचर स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन, ये भी एक नया प्रयोग, नया एक प्रावधान ये किया जा रहा है. इसको बहुत जल्दी लागू करने जा रहे हैं. अब एसी का जो टेम्परेचर स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन है 20 डिग्री से 28 डिग्री रहेगा. यानी 20 डिग्री से नीचे हम उसकी कूलिंग नहीं कर सकेंगे और 28 डिग्री से ऊपर वार्मिंग नहीं कर सकेंगे। इस प्रकार का एक पहली बार इस प्रयोग को किया जा रहा है। बहुत से देश ऐसे हैं।
The timing of this proposal is crucial. Summers in India are getting hotter and air conditioners have become a necessity for many. But running ACs at extremely low temperatures, sometimes down to 16 degrees Celsius, puts immense pressure on electricity supplies, especially during peak hours. Under the new rule, AC manufacturers will need to adjust their systems either through reprogramming or software updates to comply with the 20 degree to 28 degree Celsius range. This won't just help save energy, it's also a step towards reducing carbon emissions from the coal-fired power plants that still generate most of India's electricity. According to a Bloomberg report, Pankaj Agarwal, a senior official in the Power and Housing Ministry, said, quote, "If everyone sets their ACs just 1 degree higher, we can save about 3 gigawatts of power during peak times." Unquote. With around 100 million AC units already in use and another 15 million added each year, the cumulative effect of this change could be massive. A study by the University of California, Berkeley, suggests that India could potentially avoid spending rupees 7.5 trillion, that is $88 billion, on new power infrastructure by cutting peak demand by up to 60 gigawatts by 2035. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank Bhargav and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.